Hey there. Here we are, still standing. Hope you're holding up okay if you're working from home, or I don't know, maybe that means you haven't even left your bed today. That's all right. Or maybe you're really working your butt off in one of the deemed essential industries out there. Which, in that case, thank you, and I'm happy to say that liquor stores are still considered essential. So it's a great time to pursue some of those passions and maybe learn a little bit more about some of the stuff that you love or find interesting. So let's talk about some more wine. I've got something today that I'm actually really passionate about. This is a Pais from the Garage Wine Company. And these guys are in southern Chile, the Maule Valley of Chile. Um, Really cool winery that works in mainly a natural style. And their main focus is actually to do very small production wines, just taking a single lot out of a vineyard. So finding an exceptional vineyard, whether it be Cabernet Sauvignon or Cabernet Franc or a lot of Garnacha as well, and just picking one tiny parcel of that land and making a wine out of whatever they get there, whether that's 2 or 3 barrels or just however much it is. But as they were traveling around to some of these vineyards to buy cab or whatever grapes, they were noticing that a lot of folks had Pais planted, Sansot planted, grapes that are actually really important to the history of winemaking in Chile. But nobody really cared about them. So if these vineyards were selling any of that fruit, they were getting very, very little money for it. And most of the wines being made, especially out of Pais, was made in like the Pipeno style, which is sort of like, I don't know, Chile's answer to Beaujolais Nouveau. They're fun, easy drinking wines, usually served chilled, but they're not particularly serious wines. And Pais actually has a lot more potential than what often shows up in Pipeno. So they started this single ferment project so that they could buy up some of these grapes that they were finding, the Pais grapes, the Sansot grapes, just from different lots, different vineyards all over their area. And the problem was that because they're making all these smaller production wines out of a single lot, they really just ran out of space in the winery. Frankly, ran out of fermenting tanks. So what they would do is they'd buy a little bit of Pais, they'd toss it in a fermenter and start doing its thing, and then maybe they'd find a little bit more Pais and they'd take it back and say, well, just toss it on top of that stuff that we've already got fermenting and find a little bit more. I'll just keep tossing it in the tank and letting that wine kind of all come together into one fermentation. And just, what happens there is what you get. But really focusing on making Pais in a more serious style, not that Pipeno style, but something that can be on the table with food. And Pais also, just to talk about the grape a little bit, incredibly important grape to the history of wine, especially if you're in Chile. So Pais is also known as the mission grape, and that's because this is the grape that Jesuit missionaries were traveling around the world with starting in the 1500s. And everywhere they land, they plant a vineyard. They had raisins, they'd plant the seeds from the raisins, and they had to make wine because wine is how you got people to come to church, I think. It's just, it had to be there. So Pais has been in Chile since the 1500s, and they kind of hint at this on the bottom label that 215 BC is actually to point out that Pais was being planted, fermented, and even exported out of Chile back to Europe 215 years before Cabernet Sauvignon even existed as a grape. So Cab Sauv is a naturally occurring hybrid of Cabernet Franc and Sauvignon Blanc, and that wasn't even recorded as having happened until the 1700s in France. All right, so Pais just goes way back. That's almost 3 centuries it's been in Chile before anyone was planting grapes to make wine in California. But we just don't think about it, we don't hear about it. But that grape is still around, still kicking, including some very, very old vineyard sites. So let's check this wine out. I've been really excited about Pais ever since I first encountered it, which is only 2 or 3 years ago now, because it speaks very much to just what I'm looking for in red wines, which are red wines that are a little bit lighter in style. They're more savory, they're more herbaceous, a little bit less about being, big, bold, fruit-driven wines. And Pais is that all day long. Putting my nose in the glass, first thing that jumps out at me, almost always with good Pais, but with a lot of wines coming out of sort of southern Chile, certain high elevation parts in South America, is this aromatic of like bay laurel or a bay leaf. And I think it's really just a part of this South American terroir because it's not just in Pais. I find it a lot. So if you like wines that have this more sort of herbal and savory character, you should be looking very seriously at wines coming out of South America. Let's bring it onto our palate too. So you do get some fruit on the palate. Think like ripe berry fruit, but very much brambly fruit. So it's like raspberries, blackberries, or even like a raspberry liqueur, because it's like it has that ripeness, but there's also some spice to back it up. And again, the bay laurel, black pepper, those herbal and spice notes, they carry through onto the palate. So because of the lightness of this wine, it's something that you can just toss at a lot of different foods. I find in particular, if you're thinking this is a lighter dish that maybe is a white wine pairing, try tossing some pais at it and see how it does. In particular, dishes that have like a bit of an herbal kick on the plate as well, because something about pais will really just kind of pull those herbal flavors out to the forefront. So anyway, really fun wine just to learn about, to drink, to have on your table. It's the 2018 Pais from the Garage Wine Company in southern Chile. I hope you do check it out, and I hope that you like it. Cheers.